Hi, Connect Groups, and happy Thursday. I've instructed your leaders in the email to have begun your discussion before you watch the video. And I'm hopeful that that's occurred and that you've talked about leaders and what is it that you want to see in a leader. So personality traits, characteristics, certain styles, skills. When you think of leader, what do you think of? And then secondly, what is it that you expect from a leader? What is their job description? What is it that you want from them? And now that you've had that discussion, I want to bring a perspective from Acts chapter 20, because this was actually written to leaders, so to speak. Written, no, not true, but spoken to leaders. So Paul didn't call the whole church of Ephesus. He just called the leaders to come, and he gave them three kind of broad categories of direction, and then a final fourth one, which is really telling. Now, on Sunday when I preached, I kind of more broadly addressed as if Paul was speaking this to all Christians. It certainly applies to all Christians, so that part is true, but in the most acute sense, he's speaking to leaders, and since we're all under leadership in some fashion, some capacity, it's worth us thinking and talking, and thank you for doing that. So now diving in a little deeper, I want to bring some things out, and you can allow the discussion to take its course from there. But I do ask that you pray for all your leaders. Pray for your bosses. Pray for family leaders represented. Certainly pray for government leaders, officials. The Bible is very clear on teaching us to do that. Pray for your church leaders. That should be included, of course, and any other leader that God brings to mind. But pray tonight together for leaders. I also included a clip, and your Connect Group leader can choose to show that or not show that. The entire clip doesn't apply, but it's of General McChrystal, and he's got a new book out, and I'll simply reference this, that in his book he brings out some very, which I haven't read, but just looking through the prologue and listening to the interview, he's going to bring forward something very telling here. And so before we get to General McChrystal, let's just look at the Bible text. So again, to recap, Paul starts out with the Ephesian elders and he says, look, I am holding you all responsible. So number one, leaders hold people responsible. They don't do all the work. They hold those in their care, those under their charge, responsible to be the people they want to be and to become the people they want to become. But ultimately, Paul uses a very strong language saying, I'm innocent of any of your blood. It's like equivalent to, I'm washing my hands of all this. I've given you everything. Now it's up to you. That's huge responsibility. Now it's up to you. And I get it. I understand why people don't want to be leaders, because who wants that pressure? Who wants that load? And yet, some have to carry it. In addition to responsibility, he's very clear about the fragility. How fragile is the business climate? How fragile is a family? How fragile is a church? And he is very clear in his words to the Ephesian elder, says this thing is, there's wolves right here among us in the same room, and as soon as I'm gone, they're going to come in and try and ravage this flock. I mean, it's not like wolves from out there, although they'll come. He said there's actually those right here. I mean, it's just always feels like it's the church is being held together. That's what I lead. My family, everything's always held together in some fragile moment. I understand why people want to get a lot of money in their bank and in their business, because there's a sense of stability that comes from that. Well, if we get into a jam, at least we've got this security behind us that can hold us up. But that's not the stability that Paul offers. In his kind of third chunk of material, he offers the stability of something much, much greater and of greater weight. He says, I give to you God and the word of his grace. He's saying, I haven't come with the sense of searching for silver and gold and looking after your clothing. I've come to give you God. And boy, what a leader. To bring people to the ultimate source. To bring people to the ultimate provider. One who can meet not just financial needs, but all needs. So he brings security and stability to the, right down to the bare foundation of existence. God. Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning, God. Our entire life is built on God. So leaders, in a sense, should remind us of who we are in terms of responsibility. They should be open and honest about our fragility as humans. They shouldn't try to give us a false sense of security. And then when it comes to the security, or the word I use, stability, they should give us what is eternal, what can be counted on generation after generation, and that is God. So the Apostle Paul does an outstanding job in my view, and he then closes with a very interesting quotation from Jesus. We don't have that quote in the Gospels, but we're taking the Bible as inspired in its entirety. So these words of Jesus just simply were not recorded in the Gospel, or were passed on verbally, and that's a tremendous and an authoritative way to pass on history. And he says, remember the words of the Lord Jesus, who himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Now back to General McChrystal. His words are on leaders. Number one, that leaders, in order for them to be effective, it starts with understanding the followers. And he puts the responsibility to the follower. The follower needs to understand what is it that they want for their own life. And then they need to look to a leader and be asking the question, how can this leader help me become that person, achieve that goal? So that leaders are ultimately trying to help people become who they want to become. And he specifically says leaders should be challenging followers, and even challenging followers to give. And in our current world, in the political climate, the educational climate, the business climate, the temptation is out there for all of us to look to leaders to do all the work. Certainly I feel it from time to time in the church climate. We're supposed to be praying because we're pastors, when in fact our job is to equip you to pray. Our job is to challenge you to pray. Our job is to give you opportunity to pray and to call forward the person you want to be. So in this sense, our job is to equip the saints for your work of service. That's Ephesians chapter 4. General McChrystal, he upholds that same ideology, and we see that as Paul closes his farewell address and saying, guess what, leaders? It's more blessed to give than to receive. And I extend that to everyone who is a follower of Jesus, because in that sense, we're all leading someone by example. It is more blessed to give than receive. Our mandate as Christians is to be givers. For God so loved the world that he gave. And this is a principal aspect of our Christianity, and it just, frankly speaking, doesn't leave room for coming to church as an ability of checking off a box, or an applause to ourselves, like, look, I did it. What God is calling us to, and why he appoints leaders, is to bring forward the giving nature of God himself, which he's imparted to us. So it's much more teaching and much more encouragement that I could offer, but I'll stop there for the sake of time and simply encourage you to continue your leadership conversation and pray for leaders, and hopefully your understanding of biblical leadership has grown through the dialogue and through this couple of minutes together. I encourage you all and thank you all for leading well in whatever your sphere of influence is, and I'm praying for you, all our Connect Group leaders, as I send this email. God bless and have a great time.